Good afternoon, everyone. The meeting is now being recorded. It is 4:30. Just to give you information, I am going to be the voice of the meeting today. Our chair, Chris Norwood, is on the call, but he is calling while occupied. So I will be attempting to fill his place voice only. So at this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we can begin the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you please stand, and I believe you display the flag.
There we go.
And I will lead. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United
States of America,
to the
the
republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty and justice for all.
all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, and now, Nicole, if we could do the roll call, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Starting with Chair McNeil. Starting with Chair Norwood.
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil.
Here.
Commissioner Mundra.
Present.
Commissioner Rice, whom I believe is absent today. Commissioner Dariani. Oh, Commissioner Dariani, you're on mute. Oh, you're still on mute, sir.
There we go.
There you go. Thank you. Commissioner Jones.
President.
Alternate Commissioner Awasti.
Yes.
Thank you. And alternate Commissioner Gomez.
Present.
And I'd also like to note that alternate Commissioner Awasti will be seated in place of the vacant and unfilled real estate seat, and alternate Commissioner Gomez will be seated in place of the vacant business representative seat today.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. All right, at this time, I'd like to move to item number 5 on our agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. So is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda. I second it.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioner Swain. All right,
Starting
roll.
with Chair Norwood.
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil.
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra.
Yes.
Commissioner Dariani.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Awasti.
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, so the agenda is approved. Next is item 6, the approval of minutes. As a reminder, to approve the minutes, you had to be in attendance in our last meeting. I believe we had everyone attend last meeting, so everyone should be able to vote on this. So is there a motion to approve the minutes from September 13th?
Motion to approve.
All right, Commissioner Jones.
Second.
Who is that second?
Second. We'll take that one.
Great. Starting with
call.
Chair Norwood.
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil.
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra.
Yes.
Commissioner Dariani.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Awasti.
Yes.
And Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Very good. The minutes are approved. The next item is item 7. This is our public forum. The oral public comments may be provided live during the commission meeting by, here's an opportunity for everyone who's on the line from the public to make any type of announcements or comments. Nicole, is there anyone who is willing to make a public announcement?
Vice Chair, there is no raised hand for public comment at this time.
I'll raise a hand.
Well, you're next. Because we do have in our next section announcements for commissioners. So, all right, without any public comments, we will close that item and go into our announcements. And item 8A, thank you, Nicole, for adding the subsections, EDTC commissioners announcements. And so I think Commissioner Mundra, you're ready to go forward with this.
So I got a couple of comments. One is, of course, Better Block was not going to occur as planned. And so let's see what the future holds. And then the chamber has been working on doing a job fair. And that has been quite a lot of, there's a lot of discovery in the last several weeks. And the bottom line was that the physical job fair was not coming together. Basically, there is a lack of resources from the employers to be at the job fair. And then it seemed like the job seekers are pretty busy, to look for work. So it's a very odd situation. And what the chamber has decided is to put the technology in place to have regular job fairs virtually, so that we are looking forward to cover the next couple of years more conveniently, and when possible, is to have a physical job fair as well, in addition to the virtual job fairs. And this will allow people from, all kinds of businesses to be able to save time and be able to get on to the virtual job fair and interview people, talk to people, provide information. So hopefully that can produce more instant results as we move forward. And as the market changes, it'll meet the market demands. So that's what we're hoping for. So this probably will go on for the next, we're thinking next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mundra. Other announcements? I would like to make just a couple of comments about some great news that's happened recently that of interest to me. One is that the city has agreed to invest some into a minivan micro transit program, which I thought was I think it's going to be very good opportunity for the city to keep a lot of the businesses inside the city supported by our local residents. I thought that was a great thing. The other is the announcement of Amazon buying a large piece of land across the street from where I am here in Milpitas. So I thought that was a great piece of news, and so congrats to all those in the city who are involved with those two projects.
Question on that. Do you know what type of facilities Amazon is trying? Is it more like a warehouse, distribution center, or what kind of facility they are going to put in?
So my understanding is it was Amazon.com services, which is one of the delivery units and the two appliances. But I think it's mostly office, not a big warehouse.
Yes, the old life scan complex.
Right. So with the request from Commissioner Dariani, we would direct that to Alex and his team to come back to us with that information that he requested in terms of knowing more about the facility, and he can send that to us under separate cover.
Thank you.
I would also like to add that Milpitas Adult Education Center is actually also having a job fair, and they've been able to attract 10 businesses. At minimum, I believe the number is 10 right now, that they're going to host on campus at Milpitas Adult Education Center, and I will forward that flyer or that information to Alex's team so they can distribute it to the Economic Development and Trade Commission.
Chair Norwood.
Yes.
I was saying thank you. Other announcements from commissioners? All right, we will turn to announcements from city staff.
Good evening, everyone. Alex Andrade, Director of Economic Development. Pleasure to be here virtually today on October 11th. We have two announcements, and we're going to start with the fact that our City Council has approved a 2-year limited term Economic Development Specialist to join the Office of Economic Development and the city in terms of helping on various projects and initiatives related to the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act funds. You've heard our Assistant City Manager, Ashwini Kantak, give you a presentation last month. And so the gentleman's name that's going to be joining us is Eddie Trong. He is currently the principal of DT Strategies, which is a firm that specializes in business advocacy, lobbying, government affairs, and policy relations, or public relations. He was formerly the policy director at the Silicon Valley organization, better known as the San Jose Chamber of Commerce today. So we actually have Eddie with us today, and if he is interested and wants to say a few words, we can promote him to a panelist. And I see that he's on. Eddie, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you so much, Alex. Again, Eddie Trong. Very excited to be joining the city of Milpitas and to be serving the community here. Many of you know me through my work with the San Jose Chamber of Commerce, and before that with the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. I'm no stranger to the business community, and I'm very, very excited to be contributing to our small business recovery, particularly through the city of Milpitas. I actually see some familiar faces here. I see Marshall Jones, when you served on the San Jose Chamber Board as the representative of Fairmont Hotel. The hospitality industry, I'm very excited to see how I can help there as well. And I see some of the faces here. Commissioner Mundra, I was very intrigued by the work that you've been doing with the Milpitas Chamber, the job fair. One of my passions, in addition to economic development, is I'm also currently a workforce development consultant where I consult for the Eastside Union High School District. And so I look forward to helping you with your work through job fairs and other activities to help build our talent pipeline within the Valley. I also look forward to learning from you all, learning from Alex. I'm excited to join the team, and I am excited. What more can I say?
Thank you very much. That's greatly appreciated.
Yeah. Eddie, thank you for joining us. I just want to say once again, thank you to our City Council and our Chair, Chris Norwood, and various other people that have been in conversations with various staff members and council members. So just want to say thanks. We have a lot to do as it relates to ARPA projects and initiatives, and we're going to get going, and we'll start with the Small Business Assistance Grant Program, and so more to come on that. The next announcement is coming from Nicole, our Economic Development Specialist.
Everyone, good afternoon. Last Thursday, October 7th, we held our 5th annual Milpitas Manufacturing Day. It was a very successful, positive event. We were happy to have built a program that was all female, except for our panel moderator, Chris Norwood, who did an excellent job as moderator. On our panel, we had Sherry Liss, Executive Director of the Semi Foundation. We had May Labata, Production Manager at TDK Headway Technologies, and we also had Chris Stadelman, Director of NovaWorks. So it was a great trio of women on the panel talking about how COVID has impacted their day-to-day, the need for more women in manufacturing, and how do we open career pathways for students, like the students we had in the audience that day. We had over 200 participants from both MUSD and from the community. I think in total, we had just over 220 folks. And next year, we hope to do this again, but in person. So thank you all for your support. And thank you to the commissioners, Commissioner Gomez in particular, who gave closing words, Chair Norwood for moderating, and Commissioner Dariani and Commissioner Mundra and Commissioner Gomez again for donating to our raffle prizes. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We'd also like to thank the superintendent and the Milpitas Unified School District for once again actively participating and promoting the event within their campuses, and we are at some point going to schedule a debrief from the.
Thank you.
Chair Norwood, you broke up at the end, but I think we got your message. Are there announcements from city staff?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Announcements from any city council liaisons, and I don't see our liaison here today.
That's right. I don't believe Council Member Dominguez is with us today.
All right, and so we can move on to our business items. Now, I understand there's a lot to cover today. There'll be two presentations, and through some of the presentations, there'll be pauses so commissioners can ask clarification questions. There will be time at the end for Q&A, but because the time is limited, we ask that you keep your questions to the point and limited, and make sure that the pauses that we give are for clarification questions. The main Q&A is at the end of the presentations. So the first business item for today is going over you took it off the screen. Where's my?
Sorry about that.
The fiscal benefits of employment land study. And so, Alex, we will turn it over to you. Alex, we can't hear you.
Thank you,
Alex,
Vice Chair McNeil. Nicole, will you be the one driving the PowerPoint?
That's right. Do you not see my screen right now?
I do. Do you want to put it in full slide
Oh,
mode?
yes. Okay.
Thank you. While Nicole is doing that, just want to say we're incredibly pleased and excited about presenting the fiscal benefits of employment land study. We were in front of you back in March, I believe, where Daniel Degu provided a overview of RFP. We issued that RFP, and our consultant is Economic Planning Systems, EPS, and they have done an amazing job on what we call phase one of a two-phased project. And it's a really important body of work for us as the city, as it's going to help create the environment for development of a premier innovation district located around the innovation, or rather around the transit center. So there's various things you're going to learn today. There's a lot of data, and but at the end of the day, if the market conditions are right and the city council explores specific policy actions, then the Office of Economic Development will be able to proceed with really aggressive business attraction efforts that incentivize commercial development in this area. And there's a lot of positives, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. So why don't we go to the next slide, please? So this slide is just giving you an outline of today's presentation. We're going to talk about the importance of the actual study, fiscal benefits of employment lands. We're going to talk about the study itself. You'll learn about the background and the summary of findings. I believe you have read the full technical report. Hope you have. I know that we provided a memo for you to just kind of give you a higher level understanding of the phase one. But the phase one report includes various analyses, and it's a fiscal impact analysis, an occupation and wage analysis, the innovation district development scenario analysis, and a residual land value analysis. And that last one, think of it as pro formas. And if you want to certainly dive deeper, by all means, please go to the technical report by Economic Planning Systems. And then we'll touch on phase two, which is currently underway, and that's the Innovation District Framework Plan. And we'll talk about next steps and recommendation, and really look forward to having a conversation with you all. So next slide, please. So make no mistake about this, we're talking about competition, and what you see in front of you is not necessarily a new visual. You saw this under the economic development strategy. And the reason I talked about competition is that this is a historical view of real estate development by different real estate prototypes. R&D stands for research and development, office, manufacturing, and warehouse, distribution in those different colors. On the left-hand side of the screen, you have millions of square feet of overall development. On the bottom of the screen is the timeline. And we're looking at around 1980, 1981, all the way through about 2018. And what's really striking here is for a couple decades between the 1980s and the 1990s, it was incredibly active in Milpitas. New businesses calling Milpitas home, technology, emerging technologies, and you see all different real estate product types doing incredibly well. And then the opposite happens around the dot-com boom and the dot-com bust. And in this century, we essentially have flatlined. And this means that we haven't seen a lot of new commercial development. We've seen a lot of residential development around the transit center. And we're in a housing crisis and definitely need to see residential. But we need to provide jobs for our residents as well. And so what we're attempting to do with this study is to provide data that helps us with incentivizing development. By incentivizing development, real estate development, the results will be not only good quality jobs that are created, but then also creating and diversifying our economy, creating business attraction efforts. So really what we're trying to do is go from flatlining to basically providing a lifeline. And there's various ways of doing that. Next slide, please. This next slide is not new to you as well. This is the occupational mix and diverse workforce. Also from our economic development strategy, what is new to you is I've added the third column there. So this is the top 10 occupations in the city of Milpitas by number of jobs. And then you see the average annual wages. The reason we're adding this has to do with creating the environment for a premier innovation district. And we will get into a wage analysis. But the reason I wanted you to see this again is that of the approximate 52,000 people that work in Milpitas, when you look at the top 10 jobs in white, those are the types of jobs that pay well and are generally for people that may have formal education. And not to say that the jobs in red aren't being occupied by people that have formal educations. But the reason I put this out is when you look at the jobs in red, they tend to be service sector jobs. And we're looking at low wage jobs, and low wage jobs will be considered anything under $40,000 a year. And you see jobs like retail salespeople, fast food and counter workers, cashiers, cooks, and we need those types of workers in our city because we have a lot of retail and service. However, if we want to make sure to increase the quality of life for our residents, we have to ensure to create an environment where we can upskill our workforce and ensure that they can stay and buy homes and the like. So that's why you have this information in front of you. It's going to tie into a part of the conversation that Daniel's going to speak to in just a little bit. Next slide, please. So the Innovation District, if you look at the left side of the screen, under that lavender color area, that's the Innovation District. It's not fully inclusive of the full 74 acres. Nicole, if you can put your cursor around the Stratford area and the hotel, there's 3 or 4 parcels just south of Great Mall. That's also representative of 17 acres of the overall 74 acres. And then you see the area along the Montague Expressway and the Transit Center. That's roughly 57 contiguous acres. That, in a nutshell, is the Innovation District boundary. Our vision is to create an environment and a destination for employment, a job center with modern office, R&D, buildings, flexible space for people to interact through creative collisions, emerging technologies, placemaking. We're talking about institutional space, could be business incubators and accelerators, and an anchor tenant that brings in quality jobs near transit and near people's homes. So the aim here is to plan for a well-connected innovation district near the transit center with really strong sound infrastructure that supports bike paths, pedestrian scale, sidewalks, social gathering places. And, you know, it's interesting because what we end up happening in Milpitas is this is where the jobs, the tech jobs come to sleep. Well, we have a very high proportion of people with advanced degrees. And instead of going to the 101 corridor for jobs, they like to have jobs near their homes. Next slide, please. The Milpitas Innovation District has various benefits that are on the screen. And for people like our chair that probably can't see this, I'm going to spell this out. The various benefits include at full build out, this would strengthen the city's long-term fiscal stability through diversifying the economy, growing the economy, and creating jobs. Business attraction is something we've been talking about, but we also want to focus on business retention. We have great companies in Milpitas that are maybe poised to grow, and this is where we want them to grow. We've talked about employment and upskilling opportunities for local residents, and we want to continue to enhance that sense of place within the overall metro specific plan. Next slide, please. This next slide talks to the principles of development in order for shaping the future. And we're going to ask you a question at the end of the presentation related to this. And staff believes that protecting and preserving our employment lands is incredibly important for long-term fiscal health. Promoting densification and intensification, think of heights and density. Exploring a mixed use opportunity with commercial development as the primary type of real estate that you see around the transit center, and residential as secondary. Remember that there are roughly 7,000 residential units that are either being built, are completed, or going through the entitlements phasing right now. Plus there's opportunity for more residential at the Great Mall site. And we, in economic development, would encourage parcel assembly for the highest and best use. We've talked about promoting pedestrian-oriented streets and activating public spaces through various placemaking elements. And then we want to make sure to have the most cutting-edge infrastructure and really focus on being a smart city through broadband and other utilities and such. So next slide, please. We're going to now get into the actual fiscal benefits of employment lands study, background and summary findings. So next slide, please. So just to remind you, only about 28% of the city's land is considered employment lands. So that's why it's incredibly important for preserving and protecting our employment lands, because they create high quality jobs in the future in terms of that's where it happens. But our employment lands are really significant contributors to cities' fiscal stability through property tax, sales tax, business to business relationships, and other revenue sources. So we want to ensure to enhance our employment lands because they provide very important revenue sources that allow the city then to provide the services and the community facilities that our city has become accustomed to. Next slide, please. And this really quickly, the economic development and job growth is one of the 7 city council priorities. This particular study and the project goals are making sure we have long-term city fiscal sustainability. We've talked about preserving and protecting our employment lands. We want to talk about balanced growth, creative placemaking, and of course, business attraction. And the next slide, just briefly here, the scope of work. This is a 2-phase project. Our phase 1 talks about the different analyses that are on the screen, which I mentioned at the outset. And then the Innovation District Framework Plan, which is phase 2 and currently in progress. We'll touch on that high level in just a little bit. Next slide, please. So I believe this is my last slide before I turn it over to Daniel. We wanted to make sure to remind you of the summary of findings at the beginning and toward the end. So some of the overall findings of phase 1, very heavy in data, which you're going to see next, is the following 5 findings. The city's current employment lands make substantial and positive revenue contributions to the city's budget. Number 2, you're going to see a table that indicates that in the future with new real estate development, all of the different types of real estate types, both residential and commercial development will provide positive revenues to the city. And in terms of occupational wages, you're going to see a comparison between Milpitas and Mountain View, Sunnyvale, and Santa Clara. And although our wages aren't as strong, with the successful development of an innovation district, it was going to bring broad range, substantial benefits. But one thing that's incredibly important that we want to get across today, and we're also going to give a similar presentation tomorrow in front of City Council at a study session, is to ensure that in order to go from today's environment to the future state where we become a premier innovation district location, then we have to ensure to explore policy actions that help us spur the evolution and the development of the innovation district. That is to say, the city has control of some aspects related to not only economic development, but real estate development. And then there's other aspects that we cannot control, such as the market. But there's policy levers that we can take a look at to help the development community and having projects become more feasible, or as they say in the business, to pencil out. Next slide. And I think this is where I'm going to turn it over to Daniel, and he's going to give you information related to the actual study. Thank you.
Hi, Alex.
Yes.
Are we able to ask questions for understanding or bring things to your attention that might be valuable for your study session tomorrow at this point, or no?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Norwood. We will not be able to put it into the agenda report because that was made public last week. However, in our presentation, it would be great for us to have an opportunity to say to our city council that we were before you today, and the Economic Development and Trade Commission suggests or recommends to the city council that the following be considered. So yes.
Okay, so I'll start with that really quickly. A couple of things is that when you speak of an innovation district, there are probably very few people that understand what that is or have seen one. So in your presentation or discussion, you're able to potentially model or talk about other areas, as for say Mountain View or Sunnyvale or Santa Clara, where they have innovation districts either in the works or they've developed them. And then also the policies that the city council have implemented to ensure or open up the doors for those things actually to evolve. Because again, you're talking theoretical or visionary, and when we have tangible examples of what those things are, how they got there, I think that would be very helpful to city council.
Thank you. And just quickly here, the phase 2 is actually looking at case studies of various innovation districts. So we're going to be bringing that back to you at some point in the future. And yes, thank you on all those comments. We will make sure to relay the innovation district and kind of what they are much better, and then the policies to open the doors for future development. Thank you.
And that may even include field trips. And I'm sure, depending on the Economic Development and Trade Commission's member schedules, their ability to see what an innovation district looks like and what the makeup of it is. Because when you said it, you know, I thought about Shoreline Avenue, about all the different mixed-use buildings over there in that area, and how when people gathered for lunch and other things, there was a lot of cross-pollination opportunities that happened. So ensuring that folks understand what this is through not only sharing that information, but examples might be, or potential visits might be helpful as a part of this process as well.
Thank you. That you're aligned with our thoughts. We have been thinking about taking a trip to Mission Bay in San Francisco in the near future. So yes, education and learning will be a very important aspect of the innovation district process. Thank you.
I believe we can move on to Daniel.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Andrade, and good evening, distinguished members of the Economic Development and Trade Commission. For the record, Daniel Degu, Economic Development Coordinator. As Mr. Andrade mentioned, I will now begin the portion of the presentation focused on our phase 1 findings. The phase 1 findings will be presented in the following sequential order: fiscal impact analysis, occupation and wage analysis, innovation district development scenarios, analysis, and residual land value analysis. Due to the complexity of this project, I will take a few clarifying questions after presenting on each analysis to ensure the key takeaways are clearly understood, and a more formal Q&A will take place at the end of the presentation should there be more questions from the commission. So with that, let's begin with the fiscal impact analysis. Next slide, please. Thank you. The fiscal impact analysis estimates the overall financial impact of land uses on the city's general fund. The methodology used to complete the fiscal impact analysis is based on the city's adopted fiscal year 2020-2021 budget. Our consultant EPS combined financial information from the city's budget with available information on existing land uses and potential future land uses to estimate the public revenues and public expenditures for different land uses. By comparing the expected revenues to expected expenditures for the different land uses, EPS was able to determine whether on average the land uses had a overall positive or negative impact to the city's general fund budget. So the next two slides will show how our land uses impact the city's general fund budget. We'll start by first looking at how our current built environment impacts the city's general fund budget. Okay, thank you. So this is the next slide. Okay, so the table shown on your screen is a summary at how our built environment impacts the city's general fund. This table, titled Table 1, can be found in the draft technical report on page 7. You will notice under the impacts column, we have a total general fund revenues, we have total general fund expenditures, and total annual impact on the general fund. You will also notice 7 different land uses comprised of residential, commercial, and other uses. There are 2 very important takeaways from this table. Takeaway number 1, the city's current employment lands generate substantial revenues to the city's general fund budget, approximately 55%. Takeaway number 2, the revenues from the city's current employment lands help cover the public service cost for our existing residential uses. While this finding is commonly seen in other cities, it is important to note that this finding helps the city achieve fiscal sustainability. Next slide, please. Okay. So the table shown on your screen is a summary at how new development impacts the city's general fund budget. This table, titled Table 2, can be found in the draft technical report on page 10. The take home from this table is that all new development prototypes have positive impacts to the city's general fund budget, with the highest positives coming from hotels, Class A office, and office R&D uses, so our employment land uses. Our consultant EPS estimates that new Class A office and office R&D developments are expected to generate about $770,000 in new general fund revenues annually. Next slide, please. Okay, now we will transition to our findings related to our occupational and wage analysis. The occupational and wage analysis estimates the expected number of jobs and wages generated by development and occupancy of different commercial developments. This analysis not only looked at our wages as it relates to our built environment, but it also helped us complete the Innovation District Development Scenarios analysis. More information on this analysis will be provided in a future slide. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. This is the methodology piece to the occupational and wage analysis. The methodology for this analysis involved using US Census data. With this data, EPS was able to map industries to land uses. From there, EPS calculated the average wage by city and land use type as a weighted average of jobs and wages. And I'll go through that in the next slide here. Okay, so this is table 4, and this is table 4, and this can be found in the draft technical report on page 14. The key takeaways from this table are the following. Number 1, the strongest annual wages by land use development types in Milpitas are associated with Class A office, R&D, and Class A office. While some of our high-paying salaries exceed that of other cities, those categories currently have a low number of jobs for the land use type, A full build out of the innovation district will help with our annual wages by increasing it. I will get more into this information in the future section when I cover the innovation district development scenario analysis. And then the second finding that's really important to this is that the lowest annual wages by land use and development types in Milpitas are associated with hotel, retail, and warehouse and distribution. And those are, when you compare to other neighboring cities, much lower as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the opportunity where we can pause for clarifying questions if the commission has any. If there are no real clarifying questions at this point, I can continue on, and then we can get to the Q&A at the end and allow for more questions, should there be any.
I have a question, but maybe I'll wait until the end of your presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, we will have time for full Q&A. At this point, it's just clarifying questions, meaning if there was one portion of it that wasn't understood. If there's no clarifying questions, we can move on, Daniel.
Okay, thank you. Can we move on to the next slide, Nikki? Thank you. The Innovation District's development scenarios analysis. This estimates the different levels of development, jobs, salaries, and fiscal impacts based on the build out of various innovation district land use scenarios. And we looked at 4, and I'll go into that in more detail in the next slide. Okay. So this is the methodology component to this study, this analysis. So we defined 4 innovation district scenarios by building square footage and land use mix. And then we applied a fiscal impact analysis, which you learned about earlier in the presentation. And then we also applied an occupation and wage analysis results to the scenarios. And what this was able to help us understand is, by having the innovation district be fully built out, how does this impact the city's general fund budget? And how does this impact the city as it relates to jobs being created and also wages and salaries? And then from there, EPS calculated the expected net fiscal impact, employment impact, and salaries for each scenario. And I'll go through that in the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is table 8 of the report. Scenario 1 reflects the existing environment and current parcel uses of the innovation district. Current parcel uses include warehouse and distribution. It's about 43% of the overall innovation district. Class B office, which is 13%, and industrial, which is 12%. I will mention before going on to the next scenario, our innovation district is a total of 74.4 acres. And so when I mention the breakdown of percentages, it's based on the 74.4 acres. Okay. Development scenario 2 represents redevelopment of parcels as commercial retail, which would be 48% of the innovation district, with a strong ongoing warehouse and distribution component, which is about 31%. Development scenario 3 represents a strong presence of new Class A office and Class A office R&D development, about 50%, as well as light industrial uses at about 31%, with continued hotel uses and modest amounts of housing and open space. So we see a lot more variety with this mix. And then development 4 represents an even stronger presence of a new Class A office and office R&D development, about 87%, along with continued hotel uses. So truly a more traditional innovation district focused really on employment and Class A office specifically. Okay. Next slide, please. So under the innovation district build-out scenarios, the district has the following positive impact. It creates between 1.74 million and 3.86 million square feet of commercial development. It has a positive fiscal impact on the general fund from 6.5 million to 10 million. It creates 2,000 to 14,000 jobs, and the total annual salary of 140 million to approximately 2 billion in annual salary. So as you see, as you look at scenario 1 compared to 4, 4 has the most strongest results all across the board. And it just shows you that with the full build out of the innovation district, it provides significant positives to the community and to the city as well. Next slide, please. Okay, now we'll get into the residual land value analysis. Next slide. So the residual land value analysis estimates the development revenues to cost to determine if a development project pencils out. So really we're looking at what does a developer look at when they're determining a project and to see if it's going to be built. They're looking at factors such as revenues and cost, and they're trying to ensure that the revenues will exceed the cost so that way it can be buildable. And so that's what we did with this analysis. And I'll go into further detail in the upcoming slides. So when a developer is making a decision to build a project, they're looking at revenues and costs. And when they look at cost, they're looking at several costs. Of those costs, they're looking at land costs, they're looking at construction costs, hard costs as well, soft cost, hard costs being material costs, lumber, steel, anything related to construction really. And then soft costs as far as architecture, engineering, marketing, financing. And then there's another very important piece to cost to a developer, which is city permits and fees. And that's all related to entitlement, timing of, development, impact fees, any type of fee that would be associated to build. And then at the same time, they're looking at the revenues to see, does that exceed the overall cost to allow it to be buildable? So we looked at that during this analysis and tried to see how certain types of uses would allow it to, would pencil out or not. And that will be further discussed in the next 2 slides. Okay. So there, as I mentioned, there are many costs to a developer to build, and many of these costs are outside of the city's control, though several are determined by city policy, and those policies are related to development impact fees, limits on land uses, setback height limits, parking requirements, and also ground floor retail requirements. So what we try to do with this analysis is look at the areas that we can impact on development and seeing how we could model to see which opportunities could be improved for development through different sensitivity analysis. And I'll go through that in the next slide here. So what our results indicated through the residual land value analysis is that the developments on the left all are supported currently and are currently being built because they do pencil out. And that is light industrial, warehouse and distribution, townhome, and mid-rise residential, which is 7-story development. The following development prototypes on the right in the light orange kind of yellow colored boxes, the Class A office, 5 or 8 story, Class A office R&D 4 to 5 story, and high-rise residential 12-story currently are not supported from a development economics perspective, and would need to be accommodated through policy levers and also through preserving and protecting of our employment land in order to ensure that these type of prototypes can be developed. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a summary of the different modeling that was done. We looked at baseline and improved. And so baseline is really looking at if a developer was to build today under the current conditions, how feasible is it? And the baseline for Class A office, 5-story, Class A office, 8-story, Class A office R&D, and high-rise residential all turned out as baseline to be negative. So it essentially means that a developer is unable to build this product because it basically the expenses are much more than the revenues that are going to be generated through the development. But then we also ran a improved model that was focused on, if we made modifications to certain conditions, how viable is the project? And what we learned through Class A office and the Class A office R&D and high-rise residential is that through these modeling of sensitivity, these projects are actually feasible and they do pencil out in Milpitas. But we needed to make very specific adjustments that the city can control for these actions to actually work out. And there were 4 specific things that we were able to modify. One related to policy adjustments, and that was a reduction in impact fees, specifically the transit area development impact fee on commercial development, as well as easing of parking requirements with the innovation district and the ability to incorporate the BART station. There's a tremendous opportunity to not have to have so much parking as we're trying to utilize the connectivity that we have throughout the region. So by reducing the parking requirements, it significantly improved the feasibility for development, as well as market adjustments such as increases in lease rates and reductions in capitalization rates. So with those 4 actions, it actually indicated to us through our analysis with EPS that these 4 different prototypes are actually feasible and will help in diversifying the local economy with increased revenues to the city's fiscal health as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, in order for the innovation district to be successful, the following types of actions and policies will need to be explored by the city council in order to ensure that the projects are feasible going forward for specific development related to employment land uses. And that would be protecting and preserving employment lands through land use designations, offering flexibility and density and height to support development economics, consider reduced parking requirements for employment uses in a transit-oriented area, consider reduced development impact fees on future office and R&D projects, and last but not least, expedite the entitlement and permit process through development agreements, public and private partnerships, and facilitating pre-development meetings with various city departments and developers. Next slide. And this here is just kind of a summary that Alex had mentioned earlier on in the presentation with our findings. There are 5 very important findings that we've learned through the study as a recap. Number 1, the city's current employment lands make substantial and positive net fiscal contribution to the city's budget. Number 2, on average, all new development in the city are expected to provide positive fiscal contribution to the city. Number 3, our occupational wages in Milpitas tend to not be as strong as Mountain View, Sunnyvale, and Santa Clara today, but with the development and build out of the innovation district will make us incredibly competitive in the future. And then number 4, the successful development of an innovation district would bring a broad range of substantial benefits. And number 5, city actions can help spur the evolution and development of the innovation district. Next slide, please. So I have a couple more slides and I'll be done. So this is now transitioning to phase 2 of the innovation district framework plan, which we are currently working on at the moment with EPS. Next slide. So currently we're in progress. Chair Norwood mentioned case studies. Yes, we are working on case studies at the moment. We're looking at 4 different communities, one being Mission Bay in San Francisco. We're looking at Seaport District in Boston, which is an innovation district. We're looking at Fremont, the Warm Springs, South Fremont Innovation District. And then we're also looking at Sunnyvale. They have a pretty interesting district that has transformed from a not so great employment use location to now being very vibrant with Class A office and Class A office R&D. So we think there's incredible learnings from that transition. And so we're having EPS study that as well. And at the same time, with today's meeting and tomorrow's city council meeting, We'll be gathering feedback and working with our consultant to develop a set of policies and actions, potential policies and actions to support the Innovation District implementation. And we would look to bring this phase 2 finding to the Commission and Council in 2022 when we are able to wrap this segment of the phase up with our consultant. So with that, I'm going to transition and hand off back to Alex. He'll go over next steps and recommendation for the Commission. Alex?
Thank you, Daniel. So in terms of next steps, well, as I mentioned at the beginning, we were in front of you back in March. We have this very data-driven analysis. You have the reports, which is phase 1, the technical analysis. That's really where we are today. We're presenting in front of you today. And we are presenting in front of the City Council tomorrow under a study session. So we do look forward to coming back and giving you an update as it relates to phase 2, which is, as Daniel was just mentioning, the Innovation District Framework Plan and perhaps a field trip. So more to come on that. Next slide, please. So we've given you a lot of information. We recognize it was very data dense, but there were incredible amounts of very important information for us to set a plan forward. So just to have some discussion questions in front of you, just to set parameters or anything you'd like to add, these questions before you, do you agree with these policy levers? And the policy levers, as Daniel was just indicating, are basically incentives to ensure that we're able to have projects pencil out. In today's market conditions, our area around the transit center doesn't lend itself to the office and R&D types of development and the jobs that we're trying to attract. But with these various policy actions, it can help move the market conditions. And question number 2, do you agree with the vision and the direction of this innovation district? And then 3, do you agree with the 7 principles of development for the innovation district? We could leave this slide up. We're ready to take any of your questions and or clarifying questions or any thoughts that you may have as we envision what this area of Milpitas looks like. I was planning to say this, but I didn't say this at the beginning. We're also following through on the general plan 2040 that was approved by our city council back in March. And specifically, there was a section in the general plan that recommends exploring the development of an innovation district to increase employment densities and leveraging the proximity to the transit center. This is what we're attempting to do. And then our economic development strategy, which I will resend to you all. Specifically, strategy 27 recommends identifying and preserving office and research and development real estate opportunities around the transit center. There again, this is moving those recommendations that our city council have approved. So with that, I think I saw
there was Commissioner Dariani had a question that he wanted to bring up. So I'd like to go to Commissioner Dariani.
Yes, from the presentation, it appears that by creating Class A type of buildings, it is going to create well-paid jobs, which is consistent with what we have seen in other places. So my question is, what are we going to do to promote Class A buildings, and what are the restrictions? As a follow-up to that, I saw some discussion about 5-story buildings versus 8-story buildings. What are the restrictions in the city of Milpitas to create high-rise buildings, 5-story and 8-story buildings? So it's a two-part question.
I can go first and then I'll hand it over to Daniel. In terms of creating the environment for Class A, as I was just saying earlier, today's market isn't there yet. So we have to look at these various policy levers in order to help. And as Daniel mentioned, there are things that the city can control and other things that the city cannot control. And things like reducing parking requirements, allowing more density and height and floor area ratio, perhaps the development impact fees are reduced or are cut at 50%. There's other ways of doing this, development agreements. So it's not going to be easy. We recognize that developing an area that kind of looks similar to a downtown in some respects maybe kind of challenging, but we're up for the task, and this is going to take some time. But I've been talking to real estate developers and investors in the last couple of months, and even most recently last week, I have been giving tours of the city, not just the Innovation District area, but the entire city. And I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing from investors. And the general plan, the specific plan, the Milpitas Metro specific plan is really creating, those are the policy documents that are going to allow us to be successful in the future. Daniel, do you want to go ahead and add to that or tackle the second question?
Yeah, I think Alex, you covered that incredibly well. I would just like to add, when you look at the Milpitas Metro specific plan and the various planning documents that have been adopted by council, it really provides a proper framework for these future developments to be built. And there is, as Alex mentioned, a strong interest in seeing development for these types of commercial uses. So what we're doing is really supporting that process and providing the tools that will likely be needed to really bring those projects to fruition in a manner that's going to be sooner rather than later. So that's the only piece that I'd like to add to that, Alex.
All right, I'd like to go to Commissioner Mundra for a question.
I have a couple of different questions. I'll just ask the questions first, and then we can get the answers. So in the documents, there was great reference. Oh, first of all, let me absolutely appreciate this huge amount of work, which is, I think, is very,
Commissioner Mundra, you'll need to speak up a little bit. Your volume is going out.
Oh, is that right? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes.
So sorry about that. So first of all, thank you for all the documentation. It was very informative. It's a lot of work to be appreciated. And out of the documentation, I had a couple of questions. One was there was some references to, mid-rise residential, and I couldn't quite get a sense of whether the language was positive or not supportive of mid-rise residentials, and if you could explain that. And then the other question I have is, some of this, some of these calculations, is it pretty straight modeling, or is it more composite, has more facets? And I'll use hospitality as an example, because hospitality was mentioned here as being sort of low in numbers. And yet, when the Innovation District takes off, it will be drawing a lot of people to the area. And what does it affect? But it's going to need hospitality right off the bat. There's going to be a lot of conferences and everything. And
you are dropping off, but I think we understand the questions if we'd like to get those answered.
So just finish off. So, so hospitality basically supports tourism, particularly in this area, because we're almost the capital of the world, and we'll be drawing people from everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Do you want to take the first question related to the reference of the mid-rise residential and the response that we have, whether it's positive or non-supportive?
Yeah, happy to do that. Yeah, so to answer your question, Commissioner, we're looking at diversifying the economy and ensuring the economy is fully healthy, and everything, all uses are incredibly important to that aspect. So mid-rise uses that are 7-story are currently being built within the city, and they're providing positive impacts in their own ways. And so that's important to the city, and we want to see that. But at the same time, when you look at the Milpitas Metro specific plan and you start to see our community be built out, there's also opportunities for high-rise development as well in various areas throughout the city. And we looked at that, which is a 12-story. So what we're really looking to do is really create an ecosystem that can provide that diversity and also provide that fiscal health to the city. And every use plays a very important role in that process. Not one particular use more than the other. We need all to kind of coexist together, and that's how we're looking at these studies, is trying to better understand how these uses can come together and how we can bring more uses that we're not currently seeing within the district and within the city as well. Alex?
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.
Nicole, can you please bring up the slide with the map and the various acreages, please? And I think that'll be helpful to respond to Commissioner Mundra's question related to hospitality. And if I understand it correctly, I may be asking you a question just to clarify, but this visual will be really helpful.
And that's the last slide of the presentation, by the way.
Just give me just one moment.
Sure.
This one, right?
Yes.
or
Is there a
the-
larger? There should
There's
be
a larger
view.
one on
Yeah.
the last slide, like back up last slide.
Anyway, what I will start saying is that currently, yes, that's the slide. There are two, if you can enlarge that, please. There are two hotels currently in existence. There, you can tell that there's a large H right where it says 14.6 acres, just to orient you there, that's Montague. At the corner, that's where Stratford Schools is located. So there's two parcels under H. They equal about 7 acres. We would envision that the hotels stay there and perhaps get rebranded. We don't know for sure. There's another opportunity as you go down toward Montague heading eastbound to Highway 680. So where you see like the 5.38 acres and the 7 acres, there's also an opportunity perhaps to have a hotel in that general area. We recognize that the city currently has 20 hotels. We have the Element Hotel ready to open in the next month or two. There's another 1 or 2 hotels in the pipeline. We're at about 2,500 keys or 2,500 rooms, maybe 2,600. So we don't want to oversaturate the market, but we do envision the hotel, the hotels being very important for us as it relates to not only creating jobs, but transit occupancy tax, which is the hotel tax. I think the one challenge that we have, especially like what you've seen in the pandemic, the TOT revenues tend to be volatile, very similar to our sales tax. So, but it is something that we're going to keep track, and we hope that there is opportunities for additional hotels around the transit center. Does that get to your question, Commissioner Mundra?
So my question really was about how you go about calculating the returns on hospitality, that it has more facets. For example, it would influence tourism, particularly in the Bay Area. And people who come in, stay there, they probably want to go up to the city and everything. And so there's other facets to it that would imply a bigger financial model that would be resulting from the influence of the innovation center.
At the beginning of the year, we put out a hotel report, and there's actually quite a bit of information in this report about the ecosystem. I think what you're talking about, the hospitality ecosystem and how positive it is for general cities. And I think you may remember that I made the statement, and we learned that for every guest that stays a night at a hotel and spends $100, they turn around and spending $222 after that in that nearby area through transportation, food, beverage, entertainment, and other services and products. So I think we're in agreement in terms of the positive externalities that hotel and hospitality has for our community.
So I was just referring to the numbers that you provided earlier. So I guess the question would really be, did you take all that into consideration when you created the financial figures that you showed us?
Well, Daniel, why don't you talk about the revenues and it's the taxes aspect of it.
Yeah. If you're asking, Commissioner, as it relates to the fiscal impact analysis, yes. So what we did was we looked at the city's adopted budget, and it was the adopted budget, not actuals. And yeah, based on that information of what we've seen with TO2 revenues, that was used as the methodology for calculating those projections and estimates that we came up with. So the answer is yes to that question.
Great, thank you.
I would like to move on to Commissioner Jones.
Thank you very much. I also appreciate all the work, the hard work that's gone into this. You've kind of answered my first two questions in the dialogue that just transpired. I would like to, offer my services to be involved in any way at all possible, because when you look at the third slide that we had, it showed the impact of revenues from the hotel community into the city municipality, and just what a great source it was for generating revenue. So I'd definitely like to offer my services there. The only other question I have is, we see the positives of making the adjustments that we're asking for an agreement with. I'm curious as to what is the downside of those. I mean, obviously there's always a positive, but is there any negative for making these amendments?
Yeah, I can go first, and then Daniel can follow. And I'll go back a little bit in terms of history. Before the current Milpitas Metro specific plan, and actually even still in effect, is this TASP plan, and TASP stands for Transit Area Specific Plan. And back in the later 2000s, there was this great plan to proceed with what would have resulted in the following. It was going to result in 7,109 residential units, 1 million square feet of office, a hotel with, I don't remember whether it's 250 keys or 300 keys, and then retail totaling 300,000 square feet. Fast forward to today, and what has actually been built has been residential. And that's really important for our communities. I was mentioning earlier, the Bay Area is in a housing crisis and we need housing. But we're trying to make sure that we're balancing growth. We put jobs near housing and housing near jobs, and all near the transit center. So to your question about perhaps it not happening, there is that possibility. We just experienced that. It didn't happen. The office square footage didn't happen. The retail square footage didn't happen, and we don't have a hotel yet. But what we're trying to do, Commissioner Jones, is utilize those policy actions that will help us sweeten the pie, let's just say, in order to attract that development and investment. I don't think, well, it was before my time. I'm not sure if the city did that or was thinking entrepreneurially, where now we very much want to be the location of the premier innovation district in Silicon Valley. So we're learning. We will have some challenges, but we hope that with the commission and your technical expertise and advice, and our city council and our community, we will get there.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to, before Commissioner Darian, I'd like to get to Chair Norwood first. He had his hands raised. Sorry.
Thank you. And yes, thank you. And thank you, Alex and Daniel, for your presentation. Let me know if any part of my comment drops out while I'm speaking at this point. What I'd like to say is that what I heard in your presentation about the Innovation District was a strategy for the future of Milpitas when it comes to the different types of development and what's required through policy action to basically reinvigorate, starting with the Innovation District, opportunities for further development around the city. I think about the other side of the freeway where other side of Montague, right over 880. I think about that area over there. I think about a number of different parts of the city that if the city council approves the policy action, which will affect the planning commission and other things, and the opportunity for development, it will provide new opportunities for Milpitas to reinvigorate areas that have now gone somewhat dormant post-COVID and other businesses moving that area. Is that also part of your intention to, through the Innovation District, look how the city of Milpitas and other areas can improve its economic development strategies as well?
Yeah, I'll go first, Daniel. Chair Norwood, you hit it right on. What we're trying to do is, as we're looking at these two specific plans, there's the Milpitas Metro specific plan, and the city is just about to kick off the Gateway / Main Street specific plan, and they're meant to be complementary. We want to ensure that we have nodes around the city that are working with each other and aligned. So whatever's happening in improvements and economic vitality around the transit center will help that area that you were referring to over by Highway 880. And in the in the general plan 2040 update, that's referred to as the Southwestern Employment Area. Right now, that's zoned for light industrial. It's going to move to what is known as BPRD, Business Park Research and Development. So one can envision this kind of old, tired kind of real estate product and moving into something that's a little bit taller, newer, good quality space. This is what businesses want to operate under. They don't want to go into old, tired stuff. They don't want Class B or Class C. They're looking for good quality materials, good design, a good environment and quality amenities. And we believe that as we look at these different plans, there will be complementary around the city. So yes, that is exactly the plan. Daniel, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, Alex, well said. I think just adding to it, we adopted less than a year ago the general plan 2040, and really that provides the blueprint and baseline for where we see the future of Milpitas. And as Alex mentioned, there are several opportunity growth areas within the city, in addition to the Innovation District metro area. And so this not only will help the Innovation District, but also the other opportunity areas. And that allows us to intensify, bring more great quality jobs, bring new types of jobs that are innovative and creative that can support each other, and then create this ecosystem, not only in Milpitas, but that can spill out into the broader neighboring cities to make this a place where we're seeing creative collisions occur throughout on a daily basis, on a timely basis. So this project is not only focused on the Innovation District, but also citywide as well. And so that's the other piece that I wanted to add to that, Alex.
And I just want to quickly add that a thank you to the Economic Development and Trade Commission, because you all provided guidance and support for our economic development strategy, which was approved by the City Council in May of 2020. First economic development strategy in the city in the last 15 years. This is all part of that plan, and we're just moving it along, moving it forward.
You have a follow-up question from Commissioner Dariani?
Yes, I think the main thing what we need to discuss is that if the objective is to create high-paying jobs, based on the study, it appears that we need to create Class A building which can support high-paying jobs. And I believe that should be the direction we should go. In terms of hospitality, again, I have reservations on two grounds. Number one, hospitality industry does not create high-paying jobs. Number two, if I look at the city of Milpitas versus other cities like Cupertino, we have disproportionate number of hotels in Milpitas. So if the objective is to create high-paying jobs, then we need to focus on Class A building, which is study support that is going to support high-paying jobs. Now, that's my comment on that discussion. Thank you.
You, Alex, or Daniel, I don't know if you make a comment. If not, we can go on to Chair Norwood. He has a follow-up.
Yeah, we can move forward. I think it was meant as a statement. Duly noted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to follow up by saying that with that in mind, that is part of your opportunity for your narrative about the Innovation District, not only just being a benefit to that area, but to the city as a whole, and how this ties into the general plan as well as the economic development strategy. So this isn't the appearance of a one-off for this particular area, but how it benefits the city as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, agreed.
All right, I have a comment. I think of your last question there regarding your 7 principles of development. I would just like to say I like the fact that you want to promote pedestrian-oriented streets. I just want to also make sure that we are looking into traffic situation overall, because as we expand with additional businesses and residential areas, that our streets will become more congested. And so I want to ensure that that's also being looked at.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from our council? All right. Are there any, Nicole, are there any questions from the public or comments?
Vice Chair McNeil, there are no raised hands for public comment.
Is there a motion to receive the presentation?
All right. Motion to receive the presentation.
Is there a second?
I second it.
I think Commissioner Jones, we got you first for the second. All right, roll call, please.
Starting with Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil,
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra,
Yes.
Commissioner Dariani,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Awasti,
Yes.
and Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Good presentation. Next item on our agenda, I think we're a little bit behind schedule, but I think we can catch up. This is the Economic Development and Trade Commissioner Draft Work Plan for the fiscal year 2021-2022. Alex?
Thank you, Vice Chair McNeil. I'm going to have Nicole put the draft work plan on the screen so we can talk through it. I will start by saying that this is an annual body of work. Ultimately, it starts here under discussion, and the draft work plan is packaged and goes to the City Council for consideration and approval of all 12 of our commissions. So this would be for the current fiscal year, of which is fiscal year 2021-2022. That started on July 1st and runs through June 30th of 2022. So if you don't mind, Nicole, can that be larger? The screen be a little larger? Or I could put my glasses on, that's fine.
Does that help? I expanded it a bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, can we go up to the top,
Yes.
please? Yes. So our mission statement for the commission is to advise the City Council on business issues, cultivate international trade and commerce opportunities, and make recommendations on the design, development, and implementation of all economic development matters, projects, and initiatives. And our Assistant City Manager, Ashwini Kantak, was good to remind me the other day as we were talking through the proposed draft that you see before you, is that this is not the Office of Economic Development as a department's work plan. This is your work plan. So what you'll see is that there's various columns here under topic and overall goal on the left-hand side, the specific actions required, potential schedule, and then we want to give you a project status as to what we've been doing. But I want this conversation to really revolve around what the commission can do. And I think one of the great examples is last week's Manufacturing Day event. You all were involved in various ways, whether promotions, marketing, providing a gift card, being a moderator, panelist in the past, being a speaker in terms of closing the event. And it was just a great team effort. So what we're trying to get through here today is we've listed the key topics that the department's going to work on, and can use your assistance in various ways. And that could be in marketing, promotions, advocating, reaching out and joining us as we, for example, talk about a business improvement district. And if we're going to do a survey, we'd love to have one of you or two of you come onto Main Street and walk the corridor with us, knock on business doors and talk about a business improvement district or a central business association. There's ways to get involved in like that. You also are experts. You're thought leaders and conveners in your own respective areas, from hospitality to manufacturing, technology, and other things. So we would love to connect and learn from you in that regard. So really what I'm doing now is setting the stage. For example, under the economic development strategy, those are some of the key strategies that we believe we would either commence or commence and complete during the current fiscal year. Whoever was watching the city council meeting last week, you may have noticed that the city council directed staff to take the business improvement district to you as a commission to talk through this. So we're going to come back at some point and give you an update as to what we've learned about close to 18 or 19 businesses that we surveyed in the spring and their interest in developing a business improvement district. So how is it that the Economic Development and Trade Commission can get involved in that? A really important body of work, moving on, is the ARPA funding. You met who will be our new economic development specialist for 2 years, Eddie Trong, who's still with us, I believe. The American Rescue Plan Act Economic Vitality Framework. You see there under specific actions required. There's various things that the city, through the leadership of the city council, that we'll be doing in order to ensure that our businesses have a lifeline and they go from, surviving to thriving. And we can use your assistance in that regard. Moving on to the very important workforce development and education, you have been giving various presentations by Daniel Degu, the lead of the COVID-19 workforce recovery program, as well as there's going to be funding set aside from ARPA through workforce development. We'd love for you to take a role in that. There's also the Flex Factor initiative where we work with Milpitas High School students and local businesses through workforce training. The City Council has approved and executed a memorandum of understanding with the Milpitas Unified School District on workforce development and education, partnering on Manufacturing Day, career fair, and business outreach, and there's other items there. But how is it that the Economic Development and Trade Commission would get engaged and involved in that regard? You've heard about the Innovation District, which we just talked about. The International Trade and Commerce is a very important council-directed initiative. We just launched that. Nicole Inamine, our economic development specialist, is leading that effort, and we were off to a great start. Some of you participated in various webinars through a webinar series with Mission College as it relates to international trade and commerce. You participated and you shared your expertise, and it was very well received. And then Manufacturing Day 2021, which we just completed last week. Those are the projects that we believe the Economic Development and Trade Commission can get engaged in. I'll go back quickly to the International Trade and Commerce initiative. Semicon, we are home to Semi and Sherry Liss, who was a panelist at last week's Manufacturing Day, is the head of Semi Foundation. They also host a what's known as Semicon for Semi Convention at Moscone Center. What we'd like to do, this is in December of this year, is attend this convention, take a look at what's happening there, and then potentially come back next year with a marketing table and information to begin to pitch and sell our city for export opportunities, import opportunities, and job creation. So I think I've given you a lot of information there. I don't know if Chair Norwood can see the screen here, but I wanted to describe it for him and for others that may be watching. So I'm going to hand it back to. Oh, good. I'm going to hand it back to our Vice Chair, who's leading today's conversation as it relates to EDTC and your work plan. So if you could start having that conversation as to some of those items and how EDTC as a commission can be involved in these important initiatives and programs. Thank you.
So Alex, are you looking for feedback from each of the commissioners over this plan, and just like a roll call, or what is your ask?
We can talk about, well, I'll back up. I've heard from some commissioners that are very eager and are very interested in rolling up their sleeves, so to speak, and getting involved and getting engaged. And this is that opportunity for us to be creative as to how the commissioners get engaged. We saw that with the Better Block event. Several of you were participating in weekly calls. You were going to reach out to businesses and do other things. That was a great example of how the Economic Development and Trade Commission can get engaged in some of our bodies of work. Unfortunately, and you all know that that's not moving forward, but perhaps there is an opportunity in the future to do some kind of event that brings people into our downtown on Main Street and creates placemaking opportunities. So we really need to discuss and figure out what is it that the Economic Development and Trade Commission will be doing during this current fiscal year. This will be different than our department's work plan, which also goes to our city manager's office and city council for approval. But they'll be similar because we'll be working together. But yes, what we're trying to get a sense of is how can the commission roll up your sleeves and get engaged. There's various ways of doing that.
So I'd like to interject with a time check. Do we have anything else on the agenda besides this for the rest of the afternoon or for the rest of the evening?
This is the only and last, this is the second item and the last item.
Okay, so then I would ask if all the commissioners are good with an additional 15 minutes or so, because we are at 6 o'clock.
I would remind the commission that we do have a hard set at 6:30, so we have about 30 minutes. There is another commission public meeting taking place.
Okay, well, great. Thank you for that, Alan. So
Sure,
with
thank
that, not only that we have the additional 30 minutes, I'd like to start the conversation on this particular topic. Is as the Economic Development and Trade Commission has evolved with being taking on more of a interactive role in terms of supporting the economic development and trade strategy and the group, as Alex had mentioned, they haven't had an economic development trade strategy plan in over 15 years. And within that, since my tenure as the chair, there have been some great ideas that have come up about economic development and trade commissioners potentially being ambassadors to businesses in support of the Economic Development and Trade Commission, knowing that the predominant piece of their work is on policy, interacting with staff, and making sure that the city council is informed in terms of the direction. There is Manufacturing Day. Some of the information that Commissioner Duriani has experience in as far as at the federal level, some of the experience that Commissioner Jones has experienced in terms of hospitality. It really gives us an opportunity not to do their jobs, but to determine what do we want to see in our work plan in support, leveraging our areas of expertise. I will consider my area of expertise looking at the future economic and development or workforce development component of how the Milpitas Unified School District and the parents and the innovation campus that we have increases the visibility and creates opportunity for a stronger economy in the city of Milpitas. And that's one of the areas that I can find myself wanting to be interested in. So I think as we talk about what the Economic Development and Trade Commission work plan is, it's that sort of out of the box thinking within the scope of this commission that we want to have a discussion on.
So Chair Norwood, just a question about what you just said. Yeah, you mentioned ambassadors. Are you looking at possibly each of the commissioners to be an ambassador for one of these subsections that we're looking at on the screen, or can you clarify a little bit more about what you just said?
So you just put it out there, right? Is that a possibility of, because there's one thing, all the commissioners have full-time responsibilities, they have lives, they have, a number of other things. But if someone sees that there's an area that they would potentially want to be, or we can define what an ambassador is that aligns to support the economic development and trade, the Office of Economic Development, then that would potentially be part of our work plan. But again, our goal is not to interfere with the job that Alex and those guys do, but he had mentioned, for example, walking Main Street, knocking on doors. That is an ambassador type of role. At least I would describe that in terms of ambassador. Alex, could you speak to that a little bit for me, please?
Absolutely. I think, and I've always believed that everybody at the city and everybody associated with the city is ambassador to economic development. We have different experiences and expertise, but as we all work together to create economic vitality and reinvigorate areas, it's just a win-win for all of us. So just as an example, and since Chair Norwood was talking about what I mentioned about walking Main Street, for example, I have in other jobs been able to walk with representatives from the Chamber of Commerce, from the local Chamber of Commerce, for example, and go before businesses and introduce ourselves. We're public sector, and the Chamber of Commerce are here to say hello and to work with you. Also, I've done these types of walks with representatives from the planning department, from the building department, from other city departments, just to showcase what the city has to offer our business community. So I think an ambassador, that term is a good one. We actually use it quite a bit here in economic development. That's just one example of getting involved, is reaching out to our business community. We can do, we could do webinars based on your level of expertise. I certainly can see a couple different industries being represented here. During the pandemic, we've had, gosh, I don't know, we probably have hosted about a dozen webinars. We've become pretty good at developing flyers, getting out to our business community, and getting people excited about learning and partnering. So there are opportunities in the International Trade and Commerce program that Nicole's leading as it relates to our U.S. Department of Commerce. They have a San Jose office, and they do trade missions, and they host one in June in Washington, D.C. And I could envision that staff and perhaps commissioner, through the approval of city council, that we can attend one in order to, drum up interest in business to help our businesses that are doing international trade and commerce. So there's various ideas out there as to how we can make that happen in terms of an ambassador type program.
Alex, just to add to that international trade mission, our company has hosted several trade missions on behalf of U.S. Trade and Development Agency. Maybe what we can do is next time when we host it in our office, we can let the city know if anybody wants to come and participate. You're welcome to do that, because we are actively participating in a lot of international. We host a lot of countries, like we hosted people from Hungary, we hosted people from Indonesia, we hosted people from Korea. This is pre-pandemic. So that one area, if you need any help, we'll be more than happy to. Because if we are going to host 10, 15 people, if a couple of representatives from the city come and join us, I think it's not going to make any dent in our arrangement. So that's one area where I can volunteer to, interface with the city. And if you ever need any help in the economic development strategy, that is one of my strongest suits. So those two areas I can readily lend my help to further promote the cities.
Thank you, Commissioner Dharani. That's a great example of what of a way that we can partner. You're reminding me, although this hasn't happened in a while, but we used to host foreign delegations that would come in and want to learn about economic development, want to learn about Milpitas and Silicon Valley. And in a year's time, we could host, anywhere between 4 and 6 different delegations from around the world. That's an opportunity for us to come together and, again, pitch the city for future investment, whether it's jobs, whether it's developing new businesses, incubators, accelerators, and the like. So there are a multitude of opportunities for us to work together. I think that's a really good example.
Other thing, I think with a small change, I could see immediately, I'm thinking on my feet right now, when we do have the delegation, rather than hosting them in our conference room in our office, we can say we are going to host it at the city. This way they see the city and we can do the presentation there. So this would be a good partnership to bring the city people involved in the delegation. They are going to come and visit us in our office. Our office is in Milpitas. So that's one partnership we can create, that the next hosting we can do at the city. You have as good audiovisual equipment available at the city as we have in our office. So by changing the venue, we are getting the city involved and the International Trade Commission, Trade and Development Commission.
Yes, agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like
I would
to,
love to hear, I was about to say, I'd love to hear from Mr. Jones.
I was about to say, I'd like to add something if I could.
Yes.
So one thing I'm passionate about is the item there with Milpitas High School. I had some involvement in San Jose, actually, with Mr. Trong, with the SVO organization, creating an opportunity for many of the high schools to be able to find employment internship programs at many of the local downtown businesses. And so I was able to get something started with Milpitas High School in my old hotel. So I definitely want to be involved in something like that to help develop the talent for tomorrow. Secondarily, I teach at San Jose State University and also had the privilege of hosting a few delegations coming to Silicon Valley to study how we do things from an economic standpoint. So I'm more than willing to provide some facilitation of introductions and help get my hands involved in that as well. I'm sure I can do more, but I don't want to overcommit at this point because, you know, this is all still new to me. But those are two things I know I can do.
That's excellent. I appreciate that. And that definitely falls under the workforce development and education aspect. I mean, it falls under economic development strategy. And yeah, there's various components here, the international trade and commerce, the innovation district, lots of opportunities there for you to act and be thought leaders, conveners, and we can be partners in various ways.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like, I think a couple of commissioners we haven't heard from. I'd like to get with them, but I have a procedural question. I know this is a little bit outside the scope of the agenda item, but it sounds like there is interest, and I do want to make sure we get the other commissioners to give their feedback as well. So it's almost a brainstorming kind of, you know, ambassadorship program, which I think we're open to, but we need to really define the details. So would this be a different item for agenda, or how would we proceed with going through this and defining it and then implementing it?
I think this is the right place to have the conversation because we're talking about your commission work plan. And if that's something that you'd want to do this current fiscal year, of which we have, I don't know, call it 8 months, 9 months or so to go. I think that's something we can do. We could even do a pilot program, you know, in the next couple or few weeks. Being mindful of the pandemic, we can ask a couple of you. We can't go beyond a quorum because we don't want to violate the Brown Act. But we really do want to start getting more information related to this business improvement district and bringing more energy onto Main Street. So if one or two of you were interested in joining us, we can walk and knock on doors and begin to introduce you as commissioners and ambassadors of the economic development and the city. So that's one way of looking at it, to maybe start small, I would say. It would be helpful for you all really to get a better idea of what it is we do on a day-to-day. So yeah, that's just one thought.
I see Commissioner Gomez's mic open. Commissioner Gomez?
Hi, everyone. So Alex, I'm happy to do that. Go knock on doors and meet different businesses in and around Milpitas. And I do that on my own, but I think we need to be empowered on how we can respond and answer questions, because I think a lot of the questions that come my way are mainly to do with rent costs. You know, what is the commission there for? How can I reduce the cost because we're not getting the same amount of business? You know, they can't hire people or they don't have enough staff. So there's a lot of concerns out there. I mean, it's great to go knock on doors, but if we're not empowered to help or give solutions, then it's kind of all for naught. And then also in regards to what we're doing over here with the workforce development and education, I'm happy to raise my hand with the high school. I think I do well with the students. and can help with strategy and whatnot. But I think we really need to sit down and kind of discuss how do we respond when certain questions come up. I mean, we really need to be able to be empowered to give them some solutions versus like, I'll get back to you. And we don't get solutions and we don't have the answers.
So thank you. Very well said. We don't always have the answers ourselves, but we're information brokers and we're always bridge building and trying to get people to where they want to go. We can help with speaking points. And I think you bring up a really good point. And perhaps we have what's known as a corporate visitation program, where it's more formalized, where we meet with people from the C-suite of various companies. And that's where you get really good information as to what's helping that business or what's not helping that business at that particular time. And that's where we come together and figure out potential solutions together. Like an example could be, go ahead.
No, and that was something I brought up a year or so ago, is to have kind of a brown bag lunch, or now virtual, it was before COVID, is to meet with the businesses that are, the big businesses in the Milpitas area, like Flex, like Fiscal. I mean, just a different variety of C-suites, like you mentioned, because we can learn a lot, but at the same time, the businesses are here within Milpitas, they want answers. I mean, we could understand how the big companies work, great, but how are we going to help support and influence our businesses?
Yes, we actually have been in conversations with Mayor Tran about hosting a mayor's business roundtable with various different industries throughout, and we're still developing that idea. But certainly that maybe there's an opportunity to have that and have a commissioner to participate in the various industries if that was to move forward.
Thank
And
you. I'd like
just
to
to
turn
add,
to
sorry.
Commissioner real quick, Awasthi.
Yes, I would like to walk in the Main Street district, meeting with the small businesses, with everybody and whosoever is interested. But every business different businesses I have talked to during I buy things, they have different problems, they have different questions. So nothing is tailored. One size fits all is not recommended. So when we walk, every business will have their own solution. So I am ready to be part of it and go forward with you. Please include me.
Thank you, Commissioner Awasthi. What we can do is, if we're focused on a particular item like the Business Improvement District, which the council recommended it go to this commission, we can have speaking points. We can provide you, we could have a meeting, we could provide you with information as to what a business improvement district is. It's levying of property tax, just definitions of what it is and the benefit of the business improvement district, so that you have kind of a sheet of speaking points, cheat sheet of how we can help. And we'll be there with you. We can do this together. And perhaps if we have, 4 people, we could split it up on either side of Main Street and, make sure to knock on various doors. We can also make appointments. That takes a little bit longer, but instead of just knocking on doors, we can make appointments with these business representatives so that we could also have an opportunity to sit down versus doing more of a survey type walk.
That's a good idea. But if we have the speaking points, that will be, if you can email some speaking points, we can use it even now.
Mm-hmm. We have some information, but we will have to develop speaking points though.
All right, thank you.
More to come on that. And we will also have to agendize the item here at the Economic Development and Trade Commission so that we could have a full discussion. Maybe we could start there. We could start with agendizing a business improvement district conversation, a topic, and then, yes, make a plan for who goes out with us and when. I think that's a good step in the right direction there.
All right. Other questions? There are none. Nicole, are there any public comments?
Vice Chair McNeil, there are no raised hands for public comment.
Very good. Good job, Alex. Is there a motion to receive?
May I just respond with what I believe I heard, just to make sure we're on the same page?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so there's been various commissioners talking about, different things, but kind of under the ambassador, convener, thought leader, expert. So we've talked about an ambassador program to help businesses and just support the work that we're doing in economic development. There, of course, is a partnership opportunity through Manufacturing Day. We've talked about Commissioner Jones perhaps helping and being ambassador as it relates to the hospitality arena. Commissioner Dariani helping us at the federal level in terms of economic development and in international trade. We've talked about Chair Norwood, MUSD, and workforce education, increasing opportunities there. We also have talked about, Commissioner Dariani talked about foreign delegations. Perhaps the city uses its venue here at where we've hosted foreign delegations in the past has been at the council chambers. So we can partner in that regard. Commissioner Jones indicated his willingness and interest in working on workforce development with Milpitas High School. He also does teach at San Jose State University and can talk to us further about hospitality and how to create, well, that's a really important arena for us, a business community and industry sector. And the city council has approved grants through ARPA for our local hotels, of which we can discuss further. And then Commissioner Gomez talked about ensuring that we have solutions when we go out and walk. And that's only just one very simple example of how you can become ambassadors. And then she also has interest in working with high school students. We've talked about a corporate visitation program, perhaps one or two of you joining in us in the future. Commissioner Arwathi talked about his interest in walking with staff, developing speaking points, and ultimately we would agendize on a future EDTC meeting, the Business Improvement District, otherwise known as a BID. Did I capture everything there?
I think you did. Of course, I would always help with Manufacturing Day. So
Yes. Thank you. We'll put that on our notes. Okay. So the next order of business for us is to, you'll see some track changes under the specific actions there, where we will edit that information that specifically speaks to the commission's work under those various topics located on that left-hand side column. And again, that would go to council at this point. I believe it's scheduled to go to council in November, probably at its second meeting for review, consideration, and adoption of your specific or of your work plan.
So as the way I understand it, Alex, is that you will modify this draft or it will be an addendum?
We will modify this draft because the way it reads now under specific actions, it's very broad, and in many ways it speaks to the work that the department needs to be doing. But I'd like to modify it so it conveys what it is the commission will be doing to move these projects forward in partnership or complementing the Office of Economic Development.
So the recommendation in the agenda is to approve the draft. So what I understand is the recommendation now is to approve the draft as with the proposed amendments that you just mentioned.
That is right. Thinking now, it would have been good for us to do these edits live so that you could see that on the screen. But yes, at least we have a public record since this meeting is being recorded as to those modifications. Again, it'll be action oriented under specific actions of what the commission will be doing during the current fiscal year. It will not include specific commissioner names. It'll just be a broad stroke of what the commission will do.
Very good. All right, well then, is there a motion to approve the draft?
One
with the
other thing, if I'm sorry to interrupt, just one other thing. If you're interested in us bringing this back at the next meeting where you could see the red lines and then approve that draft, that can also happen. That means that we would likely not get to our city council in November, and perhaps may happen in December.
My recommendation is that let the city update this draft, and then we can approve that draft then we can make a motion to approve that. This time, if you want to make a motion to approve this as a preliminary draft, I think that would be appropriate. But what we discussed today I think it was very productive. We got input from several commissioners. So I think if we put more data into it based on our discussion, that will be appropriate.
So we're saying we're making a motion to
Chair Norwood,
the idea of yes.
You were breaking up. You'll have to start over. Chair Norwood?
Signal.
Chair Norwood, we lost your signal.
Are we making a motion to approve? Yes, if I'm breaking up, I can. We'll just move forward without it.
Okay, I can hear you better now. So try one more time.
Yeah, we're making a motion to approve the workforce, our working draft, and with the understanding that the updated one will be brought back to the next workforce, the next meeting. Is that what we're saying?
I think that will be appropriate if you want to make a motion to accept this draft as a preliminary draft. That will be appropriate with the understanding that we will get an updated draft with clearly defined tasks under each one without putting any commissioner's name there. I think that will be appropriate at this time.
I'll second that.
All right. So if I understand it correctly, we have a motion from Commissioner Dariani to approve this as a preliminary draft with modifications to be added as discussed in this meeting. That was seconded by Chair Norwood.
Yeah.
All right. So can we call the roll, please, Nicole?
Great, starting with Chair Norwood.
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil,
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra,
Yes.
Commissioner Dariani,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Awasti,
Yes.
and Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, we got 2 minutes to spare, but I think we might as well just go to item number 10, and that's the adjournment. Our next meeting is on Monday, November 8th at 4:30. And I thank you, everyone, for joining and a great participation, great events, and thank you for putting up with me and being the voice of Chair Norwood for today's meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Can
Have a
we
good
get a motion to adjourn, please?
Oh, yes,
I
I'm
do.
sorry. Motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Who made the motion?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Dariani seconded. Perfect. Okay, I'll call the roll again, starting with Chair Norwood,
Yes.
Vice Chair McNeil,
Yes.
Commissioner Mundra,
Yes.
Commissioner Dariani,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Awasti,
Yes.
and Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Now I can say thank you. Yeah. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
everybody.
Have a
Good
good
night.
night.
Bye.
Great
Good night.
meeting.
Good night.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.